sad truth behind Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse. I know what you're all thinking, and for some of you, this is your first game in the Mega 10 franchise. Though I would almost say that's not common because of the popularity of the Persona 3 through 5. But you know, one thing I can tell you is there's a lot of sad truth to Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse that a lot of people aren't aware of. You know, mostly being that I am Jay of the Douchebag Brigade, I will break down exactly what makes it good as opposed to bad. But really, I just want to give you what the sad truth of what the game has done in its totality. Now, this is by no means saying that Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse is not a good game. It's a great game. And I would go as far as to say it's one of the games I would recommend someone getting into the franchise to play first, unless you appreciate true difficulty. And there's only one other reason why I'd say not to start with this. Because the game is so tweaked, with so much added into what makes it fun, it's a little difficult to go back and play an old Shin Megami Tensei game. So if you have plans to play any of the Super Nintendo, fan-translated games, SMT 1 or 2, or if you have any desire to do that, I would actually recommend staving off jumping right to this, because it's a little difficult to enjoy the older games graphically, and more than anything, just based off the concepts of the battle system. You see, the old games don't have press turn system, which, obviously adds a lot of depth and element to Shin Megami Tensei's gameplay as a whole. And without that, you're missing a good piece. And yet, SMT 1 and 2 are so great in their own right, and the Super Nintendo games are so great in their own right, whether it be the concept, the game itself, the story. There's so much right about those games. It just feels, because they're so outdated and graphically it's not as pleasing, it could throw you off. But so, allow me to get back to the point here. So, the sad truth about Shin Megami Tensei 4, it really all boils down to what the story, in a sense, has done. And not the story as a whole. The story being the characters. In Shin Megami Tensei 4, not Apocalypse, or Final, depending on your region, you get a lot of, I have multiple decisions to make, and I don't feel anime troped. I mean, obviously there's anime in the game, that's the drawing style, but you don't feel like you're, playing some kind of cartoon that you see on Toonami, like an anime. You feel like you're playing something real and with a lot of depth, and you feel far removed from the anime tropes that really come in the later Persona games. It kind of keeps you away from that whole friendship thing, blah, blah, blah. That is why Persona exists. That's for people who want to play for those aspects that also add elements that aren't common for RPGs, and those are fun in their own right. But when we're talking about Shin Megami Tensei out of the Mega 10 series, Shin Megami Tensei is known for its choices, its overarching story, and sometimes, like in Nocturne, Shin Megami Tensei 3, their lack of story as far as dialogue goes. And yet, this kind of flips it on its head, because you have relationship building between the main character and his female friend. You have a lot of friendships between Ghost Navarre, his brother, I don't remember his name anymore, it's been a while since I played, the half-demon kid. I mean, there's a lot involved in this that takes away what made the first game so special, Shin Megami Tensei 4, and all of its predecessors. And the sad truth is it kind of takes a back seat to the combat and the things that really matter in these games. There's a lack of choices mattering, too. I mean, there's no for instance, there's no true demon path. There's no chaos path. There's no light path. There's no neutral path. There's just a basically, I don't care about getting to the end path, and a I want to go to the end path. And that's it. And that's really a sad fact within this particular iteration of Shin Megami Tensei. Now don't get me wrong, the game is great. Again, I can reiterate, the way that they've made the battles and everything is fantastic. Though I will say that it is certainly at some points easier than any of the other SMT games. And I think it has a lot to do with the smirk system, which was also in 4, the regular 4 edition, and there's just pieces involved that I think affect the game. But that's not really to take away from it as a whole. But I do feel that the level of ease in this game is really heightened, because you have Dogma, who resurrects you, basically lives in you, no pun intended, or innuendo. However, it gives you pretty much resurrection at any time. And that really takes away from the difficulty of the game. I mean, if you don't have to worry about pretty much rage quitting or anger deaths, then it's not really an SMT game. And I know that sounds silly, but that's a huge piece of what makes the Shin Megami Tensei games the Shin Megami Tensei games. You know, I mean, hell, even Persona, you die and you gotta start where you saved. I mean, this is kind of like the PSP versions of like Persona 1 and 2, where you pretty much save anywhere, but still couldn't save in dungeons. I mean, dying and then just coming back, losing nothing. And this time around, it's not like 4, which had a cool concept of, okay, you pay Charon to basically go back over the river Styx and go back to Earth and all that. And that was a cool concept, because the second time you go, you're pretty much done. Like, if you didn't pay off your tab with him and you died again trying to challenge the same person that you just died to, you're done. You got to start over at your save point. That was, I think, hand-holding enough. But now we're at a point where it's like, without the feeling of loss of everything I've done, oh, when did I last save? There's no dread. It gives you the desire to try things more, and you know, you're less fearful, and then there's a lot less strategy involved in the game. And I have to say, as a longtime fan of Shin Megami Tensei, in fact, someone who started with Persona 3 back in 2006, I think, I have to say that I was kind of let down by Persona 3's difficulty level to an extent. And it ended up, when I found Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne 3, which I didn't even know was related other than the moniker, I was like, this is the game I was looking for. Persona 3 is fantastic, don't get me wrong. But Shin Megami Tensei 3, that's the game that really solidified my fandom for good. And, you know, ever since then, I can be honest with you, it's hard for me to even go and play other RPGs that don't have either a gimmick or that are like strategy based, because I've already basically played the best. So, props to Atlas for that. Now, getting back to the point, the sad truth here is that I feel like the difficulty level has been brought down to cater to people who come from Persona. And there's nothing wrong with people coming from Persona. In fact, the audience needs to come from Persona so SMT can get more fame and we can get more SMT games. But I feel like they didn't think that people in the, you know, Persona world could handle it. And that's not good. It's really not good. Like, the fact that we had to see that kind of transitional change is really a terrible thing. Like, I know that sounds strange, but to think that a game like that is being transitioned down just because it doesn't appeal to Persona fans, I mean, that's a terrible thing. Shin Megami Tensei is known for its difficulty. It's a difficult game, and that's how it's supposed to be. So the sad truth is, I feel like Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse was really altered by the fandom of the Persona games. And I, for one, am not thrilled about that at all, in any way. Like, I feel like that's a real, true letdown. And I don't like that. I really don't. I mean, when something like that occurs, it leads to a lack of what makes these other games special. I mean, you know, we have Persona for Persona's sake. We have Persona 3, 4, and 5 for a more casual fan base. And that's really what it's there for. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Shin Megami Tensei has pretty much been always for a much stronger audience, or an audience that really wants a higher difficulty level and is really about what Shin Megami Tensei is about. And that's part of what makes Mega 10 great, is that there's diversity in our options. But the sad truth is, Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse is putting us toward a more casual-based, friendly game when we already have plenty of that. There was no need for any more of that. I mean, we had more than enough. And the fact is, it sets us back as Shin Megami Tensei fans. Not as Persona fans, but as overall Mega 10 fans. It really sets us back a little bit. And that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. You know? Part of what made us great, us as fans, was that we were able to get variety from Atlas. And now I feel like we're not getting that. And that's really what I think the sad truth here is. Again, I like all the Persona games. I mean, I'm not talking about like the dancing stuff and stuff like that. But I'm saying the Persona games have been great. I like them all, 1 through 5. In fact, I'm probably one of the few Persona fans that really enjoyed 5. I mean 3. I mean 1. I never played the original, but I definitely enjoyed the remake of 1. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that was a great game. And I feel like we're losing some of what made those games great. Like, that's a really sad thing to me. And I don't like where this fandom has gone from here. So, at this point, pretty much going to end it there. That really is the sad truth behind the Megami Tensei series and Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse, to be as honest as possible. That's where we've seen the biggest lackluster situations. The game is an amazing game, and I hope no one takes this as a rant or a knock on what SMT IV Apocalypse offers. Fantastic game, but there's just something missing. And as an SMT fan long term, it just feels like, you know, I wish there was a extreme difficulty, I guess, that got rid of that revival piece. Because if we got rid of the revival piece and it was just the anime trope, then I'd say, you know, Atlas is just trying to get a little cash grab with some anime. It is what it is. But when you start seeing it go in a different direction, when it starts going, you know, past the point of now anime tropes to where it's actually seeping into the gameplay, because the anime stuff can be fun, don't get me wrong, but at least if that was all that was different, there'd be no, I wouldn't even have made this. Would have been no reason to make it. But the fact of the matter is, it's more than that. And so that's pretty much where I stand. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please rate, comment, subscribe, tell me your opinion. Certainly like the video, or dislike it if you don't like it or don't agree. Comment below, argue with me. I'm I'm ready for some arguments if you want to have some arguments, for sure. So, anyway, this is Jay with the Douchebag Brigade, and I'm out. And that was the sad truth of Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse.